Hartford's first year recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday. So without further ado, I'd like to offer a warm welcome and turn the program over to the Thunderbird American Indian Dance Troupe.
Oh, thank you very, very much. We're really happy we could be here today with all of you. And what we've just done is to sing what we call our welcome song. You know, many, many years ago, among many of the different tribes, whenever one group would go to visit another group, they would always start out by singing a song. And I think that's a very wonderful way to greet someone, is by singing a song. I always tell people, next time you go to see one of your friends, when you go to the door, knock on the door. And when they open the door, sing them a song. And I know there's going to be a big smile on their face, and they're going to be so happy to see you. Well, that's what we have done. We've just sung our welcome song, our greeting song to you, and we're so happy to see you all here today. We're called the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers. And right now we have our headquarters in New York City at the American Indian Community House. But we come from different tribes and different parts of the country. So before we begin, what I would like to do is to introduce you to all of the people we have here today, tell you who they are, where they come from, what tribes they come from, and their names. I always like to tell people we're very, very lucky because we have more than one name. We have English names like everyone else, but then we have names that are given to us by our tribes. And those names are very, very important because, as you know, your name is what helps to identify who you are. And we keep these names because that helps us to identify who we are, helps us to keep in touch with our people. And so those names are very, very important to us. And I see someone dancing over there. You're going to have a chance to dance with us later on. So don't tire yourself out, okay? All right, starting way down on my right-hand side is a young man. Comes from the state of Oklahoma. He is from the Kiowa tribe. His English name is Matthew, and his Kiowa name is Corn Eater. Corn Eater down along the line. Next, young lady from two tribes. She's from the Cherokee, eastern band of the Cherokee tribe of North Carolina, and also from the Taino people, and they come from a small group of islands down in the Caribbean, and her English name is Marie, and her Taino name is Conchwoman. Conchwoman. Next, another young man from the state of Oklahoma. He is from the Choctaw tribe. His English name is Michael, and his Choctaw name is Dancing Wolf. And then last, down here on the end, young man who is descended from a group of Native American people who used to live in New Jersey many years ago. They have since moved from New Jersey, now live in the state of Oklahoma. They're called the Delaware today, but he is descended from the original Lenape tribe of New Jersey. His English name is Alan, and his Lenape name is Shooting Star. And myself, I'm from two tribes. My father is from the Hopi tribe from Arizona, and my mother is from the Winnebago tribe from Nebraska. So I have three names. I have an English name, a Hopi name, and a Winnebago name. My English name is Lewis. My Hopi name is Cloud Standing Straight in the Sky. And my Winnebago name is Green Rainbow. That's who I am. All right. Thank you so much. Now we're going to be doing some dances and songs for you from different tribes all over the country. And we'd like to start by doing a dance for you, which comes from a group of Native American people who live not too far away from here in New York State. In fact, today there are 9 reservations where these people live in New York State and just over the border in Canada. They're called the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse or the Iroquois. And this first dance we'd like to do for you is a dance that they do to celebrate the coming of spring. Now, we're going to be going into the winter season just a few more weeks. And of course, in this part of the country, we have very long, cold winters. And when the springtime comes, it's a wonderful time of the year. The weather gets warmer, the trees start to get their leaves back, the flowers blossom. It's a beautiful time of the year. And so, to celebrate the coming of spring, the Iroquois people do this dance. It's called the robin dance. And the reason it's called the robin dance is because a robin is one of the very first birds that you see after the long, cold winter. And when you see the robin, you know that spring is going to be coming soon. And so in their dance, they have some very quick hop-like steps, which is an imitation of the robin as it hops along the ground. This is the robin dance of the Iroquois. Thank you. This next dance from the Iroquois we'd like to do is one of their very favorite social dances. Oh, I just want to make that very clear before we continue. All of the dances and songs that we're doing for you this afternoon are social dances. Now that's important to remember because among many of the tribes today, they still practice their own Native American religions. And as part of that religious practice, There are many dances which are sacred and ceremonial. And of course, those dances are closed to outsiders. If you are not from that reservation and you do not belong to that particular religion, you would not be permitted to see or to come in to hear those kind of dances and songs. These songs and dances that we're doing for you are social dances and are the ones that you would be able to see if you were to travel to any of the reservations. This next dance from the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse or the Iroquois, is called the fish dance. They say the origin of the dance goes back many, many years ago when the young boys and the men used to go out in their canoes into the many lakes and rivers in New York State, and they would throw their fishing nets out into the water. And as they pulled their fishing nets back into their canoes, they would look down into the water and they'd watch the fish as they wiggled and squirmed trying to get out of the fishermen's nets. Well, the young men thought that was such an exciting movement that when they went back to the Longhouse, they made up a dance in which they tried to imitate those movements of the fish dance of the Iroquois. Thank you. Now, this last dance we'd like to do from the Iroquois people is a dance they call the smoke dance. And they say the origin of this dance goes back many, many years ago also, when the Iroquois people used to live in what's called a long house. And that's just exactly what it was. A very long building where maybe 5 or 6 families would live together. The long house was made out of bark. It had a bark roof, bark walls, and a dirt floor. Now in the wintertime when it got very cold outside, in order to keep warm inside of the longhouse, they would have to build a fire. But in order to build a fire inside of the house, they had to have a hole in the ceiling for the smoke to go out. Now on certain days during the wintertime, there wasn't enough wind or draft that came in the doorways to carry the smoke out the smoke hole. So what the people would do is they would get together, get very close to the fires, and they would dance. And as they moved their feet and they moved their bodies, this was like the one you see there in his hand, they put the feather down on the ground, and then during the dance, the dancer has to go down and pick that feather up off the ground. Now, when they go down and pick the feather up, they do not go down and pick the feather up with their hands. When they go down and pick that feather up, they have to pick the feather up with their mouth. And when they go down and pick it up, they are not allowed to put their hands on the ground. They are not allowed to put their knees on the ground. And they're not allowed to put their elbows on the ground. The only part of their body that may touch the ground are their feet. And I'd like all of you to watch him very closely, because as soon as he's finished, we're going to see if we can get a few volunteers to come up here and try this, okay? So you watch him now. This is the contest dance of the Winnebagos. probably noticed that shooting star here is no longer a young boy. In fact, last December, he celebrated his 70s. Like the one you see there in his hand, they put the feather down on the ground, and then during the dance, the dancer has to go down and pick that feather up off the ground. Now, when they go down to pick the feather up, they do not go down and pick the feather up with their hands. When they go down and pick that feather up, they have to pick the feather up with their mouth. And when they go down and pick it up, they are not allowed to put their hands on the ground. They are not allowed to put their knees on the ground. And they're not allowed to put their elbows on the ground. The only part of their body that may touch the ground are their feet. And I'd like all of you to watch him very closely, because as soon as he's finished, we're going to see if we can get a few volunteers to come up here and try this, okay? So you watch him now. This is the contest dance of the Winnebagos. You've probably noticed that shooting star here is no longer a young boy. In fact, last December, he celebrated his 70s. We have all girls out here. Come on. Where are you? Come on, we need one more guy. Oh, here he is. Okay, good. Thank you so much, sir. We need you to represent our side. Oh, here we have a feather. That young man over there needs a feather. Oh, he has a feather? Does he have a feather? Okay. We have one more? One more? All right, yes. Good. We want to see good representation out here from East Hartford. All right, now, all you volunteers listen very closely to these instructions. When you hear this part of the music like this, that's when you dance around the feather. You have to dance around the feather first, okay? Then when you hear this part of the music like this, that's when you go down to pick the feather up. Now remember, when you go down to pick the feather up, you must pick the feather up with your mouth. And when you go down to pick it up, you are not allowed to put your hands on the ground. You are not allowed to put your knees on the ground. And you're not allowed to put your elbows on the ground, okay? Only part of your body that may touch the ground are the feet. You got all that? You all set? I think so. Okay, so here we go. First, we dance around the feather. further up. You keep those feathers, take them home with you, and when you get home tonight, teach your better half how to do that. It's a dance that the men do, and it's called the grass dance. I just want to mention also that these dances go back many, many years. They're traditional dances, and of course, traditions are handed down from one generation to another generation to another generation. Now, I always tell the boys and girls, when you talk about traditions, there's a tradition that we all observe once a year that goes back hundreds of years. And it's coming up very shortly, next month, right? And what's that tradition? Thanksgiving. And that's been handed down to us from generation to generation to generation to generation, and we still celebrate that. Well, that's what these dances are. When we come together at powwows, these are the dances we do, because these are dances that have been handed down to us for many, many generations. This dance goes back to the time when the people out in North and South Dakota depended on the buffaloes for many, many things. Number one, the buffalo was their source of food, right? Number two, the buffalo skins they would use to make their houses or teepees. The buffalo skins they would also use to make their clothing. The buffalo bones they would use to make spoons, knives, needles to sew with. And the boys and girls would take the buffalo ribs, which are very, very big. They would tie those together, and they would make a sled out of it that they could slide down the grassy hills out on the Great Plains. And of course, in the wintertime, the people would use the buffalo chips to heat their teepees. So they used every part of the buffalo for something. None of it was wasted. But 300 or 400 years ago, the buffaloes didn't stay in one place. They wandered all over North and South Dakota. And because the people depended on the buffaloes for so many things, wherever the buffaloes would go, that's where the people would go. So the people moved from one camping area to a new camping area very often. But before they moved into a new camping area, there were a group of dancers that they would send out before the rest of the people. And these dancers would go into the new camping area and they would dance. But they were doing something else that was very important, because out in North and South Dakota, there's this very, very tall grass that grows. Not many trees, but a lot of tall grass. And what these dancers were doing is they were dancing, they were taking their feet, and they were crushing down the tall grass. So when the rest of the people arrived, they'd have a nice, smooth, flat area to put up their camp. And they might send out as many as 100 or 150 dancers. They might be out there for a couple of days dancing. In that amount of time, they'd be able to crush down a nice, large area for the camp. So, I'm going to have our dancers come out now and do what's called the grass dance from the people from North and South Dakota. I just want to say a little bit more about the grass out on the Great Plains in North and South Dakota. I don't know, have any of you ever been out to the Great Plains in North and South Dakota? All the grass out there was 8 feet tall, but you get grass that would be 3 or 4 feet high out on the Great Plains. And so this is very important for these dancers to crush that grass down for the people that put up their camp. And I always tell the boys and girls they had to do it that way because 400 years ago they didn't have lawnmowers. They had to do it with their feet. And I just want to mention also something about what our dancers were wearing. Step out for just a minute. You see the long fringe on the top of the yoke of the shirt, the long fringe on the breechcloth, the long fringe on the leggings that they are wearing. They say they put that long fringe on there so that when the dancer moved, the fringe would sway back and forth and remind them of the tall grass blowing in the wind. So I wanted to mention why they're dressed that particular way. Now I'm going to ask a conchwoman to come out and do a dance for us, which comes from the state of Oklahoma. And it's called the Women's Fancy Shoal Dance. And this has a very interesting story to go with it. They say this dance was created back around 1945 or 1946, right after the Second World War. Now, during the war years, not only did the men volunteer for the armed services, but so did the women. And they traveled all over the world to many different countries. And while they were in these different countries, they were watching the women, and they saw how the women danced in these different countries. Now back here, back on the reservation, it was traditional for the women to do a very slow kind of dance around the outside of the circle. And of course, the men would be dancing on the inside of the circle and doing a much more vigorous kind of dancing. Well, when the women returned to their reservations, they said, we want to have a different kind of dance now. We don't want to dance very slowly around the outside of the circle. They said, we want to dance on the inside of the circle just like the men do. And we want a faster rhythm to the drum. And we want to move very much like the men do. So what they did, they created what's called a shawl dance. And when they do this dance, they wear their shawl over their shoulders and over their elbows, and they spin, and they turn, and they open and close their arms. And they say, when they open and close their arms and spin like that, the fringe on the shawl reminds you of the feathers that the men wear. Now the difference between the men's dancing and the women's dancing is the fact that when the women dance, they do not wear the feathers and they do not wear the bells on their legs like the men do. But their footwork and their movements are very, very similar to the footwork and the movements that the men have when they dance. So we now like to present the shawl dance from the people of Oklahoma. Thank you. And now we'd like to move way out to Arizona for our next dance. This dance comes from the Hopi people. And it's called, they said that when you see an eagle flying very, very high in the sky and doing very particular kind of movements, that's a sure sign that rain is going to be coming soon. And so in their dance, they imitate those movements of the eagle dance of the Hopis. you. And now, Shooting Star has another dance he'd like to do for you. This dance comes from Oklahoma also, and they call this the old style or traditional warriors dance. And they say that this is the way the warriors used to dance many, many years ago. When they returned to the village, they have all the people gathered, very much the same as we gathered here this afternoon. And at that time, they would come out and they would dance for the people. And as they were dancing, they say, they were telling you a story with their movements of some of the experiences that they had while they were out on the trail. We're going to see Shooting Star first as he comes in riding his horse. You'll also notice that in his hand he carries a dance stick that has been carved in the image of his favorite horse. We see him then as he gets down off of his horse, and as he dances, he looks and points to the ground. That's to show you that he's following the footprints of his enemy. You'll also notice that as he dances, he gets down very close to the ground. And that's to show you that he's trying to hide or conceal himself behind the bushes and the trees. But the most important thing about these warriors is the fact that they were very, very proud people. The tribe looked up to them. They had great honor and respect for the warriors. So whenever they would dance, they would always show you in their dance how proud they were to be the protectors of the tribe. But before he starts, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what he's wearing, because this is a traditional dress of the old style of traditional warrior dancers, starting with his headdress. This headdress is made out of porcupine hair. Not many people know that the porcupine not only has very long, sharp needles, they also have very long hairs which are woven into this kind of a headdress. But there aren't many hairs on the porcupine. It takes about 3 or 4 porcupines to get enough hair to make this kind of a headdress. On Shooting Star's back, he's wearing what's called a dance bustle. And these are usually made from eagle feathers. And they say the arrangement of the feathers in the bustle represents the formation that the warriors would take when they went into a battle. On Shooting Star's chest, he's wearing what's called a breastplate. And just like in medieval Europe, they wore metal armor. Well, over here, they would wear a breastplate like this, which was made out of buffalo bones. And if an arrow was shot at them, hopefully it would hit the breastplate, bounce off, and not injure the warrior. On Shooting Star's legs, up near his knees, you see what he's wearing are called 2 claws. And these are made from the hoofs of a deer. They would take those, tie them to a thong, and then tie those to their legs to help them keep time with the rhythm of the drum. And then down on his ankles, he's wearing bells. And a lot of times when people hear these bells, they say, "Oh, jingle bells." And I said, you're absolutely right. They took the bells off of the old sleds we had many years ago, the sleigh bells. They cut them up into shorter pieces. They would tie those to their legs to also help them keep time with the rhythm of the drum. So this is the old style or traditional warriors dance now from Oklahoma. so much. We're going to ask our dancers to come out. I just want to say it really has been a pleasure for us to be here today with all of you. And we're so happy that you came out today. And, you know, it's really wonderful that I said that dance is mistakenly called the rain dance. Well, we're going to call it the sunshine dance. Because we had a beautiful day out there. I want to thank all of you coming out and joining us and celebrating, you know, Native American Indigenous Day, because I think that's really important. And also for coming up and joining us and helping us to make this little gathering, a real social gathering for all people, not just for Native American people. I always say that. These songs and dances that we sing are for all people to enjoy. And I hope that you enjoyed yourself. I think you have. And we certainly have had a really good time visiting with you. So I just want to say this, you know, we never like to say goodbye, but rather until we meet again. Thank you very much and good afternoon. You want to come over and take a few pictures with me for a few minutes, and you want to come over and say hi, we'd love to be there.
Recording starting. On behalf of East Hartford Commission of Culture and Finance, I want to say thank you very much for being here with us and giving us a little bit more of history, of American history. Thank you.